Okay, we're going to do sections 1.3 and 1.4 review problems together in this video. And these will be the assignments for one of the weeks. Okay, our first problem, evaluate 10 minus 6 times 2 quantity squared plus 3 times 2 using the order of operations. And that order was, we had this acronym PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents. Now the MD and the AS are a little bit deceiving. Multiply, divide, but you don't multiply before you divide necessarily. You multiply, divide from left to right, and likewise you add, subtract from left to right. So if the division is to the left of the multiply, you would divide before you'd multiply. So multiply, divide, and add, subtract are on the same level. You just look at which one is farthest to the left. So remember that about PEMDAS. That's why so many people make mistakes with these kind of problems, because they don't realize that. So anyway, follow that order. See if you can evaluate this. So if we follow this order strictly, we do those parentheses operations first. 10 minus 12, negative 2. Then the next operation is exponents. Square the negative 2, 4. Then multiply before we add. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 4 is 10. Now you can shorten that a little. You could have actually multiplied at the same time as doing the exponent operations, because you know that you're going to be adding that to whatever the result is, and you know that that's what you're going to be doing before you add. So as you get good at these, you can shorten the steps. Okay, next problem. Evaluate 40 minus 10 squared plus 40 divided by 2. Okay, here we do the exponent operation first. Then we do the division next. 40 divided by 2 is 20. Then we add, subtract from left to right. And see here, even though the add is to the right of the subtract, but we go from left to right. So it's 40 minus 100 is negative 60. And then add to 20, negative 40. Okay, our next problem, order of operations, but it's also a good exercise dealing with fractions, multiplying and adding. See if you can do this. So you got to do those squaring operations first and then add, subtract from left to right. Squaring means multiply the fraction by itself. So give this a try on your own and come back and see what we get here. So your first step is to square all those fractions. Now I just squared them all at once in one step. 1/2 times 1/2, 1/3 times 1/3, 1/4 times 1/4. 1/2 times 1/2 is 1/4. 1/3 times 1/3 is 1/9. 1/4 times 1/4 is 1/16. So we have this fraction addition subtraction problem. So now you need a least common denominator or a common denominator. Now you can do these prime factorizations. 4 is 2 times 2, 9 is 3 times 3, 16 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. It's 4 2's. So our least common denominator has to have at least 4 factors of 2, but it also needs the 2 factors of 3. So our least common denominator has to have 4 2's in it and also 2 3's. Well, that ends up being 9 times 16, which is 144. So that's your least common denominator. You could have also found that by taking multiples of 16 until you got up to 9 times 16. So we multiply the fractions so they have the same least common denominator. The 1/4 is times 36 and 36. Then 1/9 is times 16 and times 16. and the 1/16 is times 9 and times 9. So our new problem is 36 over 144 minus 16 over 144 plus 9 over 144. So we combine that into one fraction by subtracting and adding the numerators and putting that result over the least common denominator. So we have 36 minus 19 plus 9 over 144, and that makes 29 1/44. And that's our answer. Okay, another problem in 1.3. Evaluate the quantity 1/6 minus 1/2 to the third. So following PEMDAS, you have to subtract those fractions, then take the third power of that result. So give this a try. So we find that our least common denominator is 6, because the first multiple of 6 is divisible by 2, so then we multiply the 1/2 fraction by 3 and 3. Then we can subtract those fractions, 1/6 minus 3/6, and we get negative 2/6 cubed, which reduces to negative 1/3 cubed, and that is negative 1/3 times negative 1/3 times negative 1/3. Okay, so the negative ones multiply out. Two negative ones make a positive 1, times another negative 1 makes a negative 1. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So we get negative 1 over 27, or you can write that as negative 1/27. Okay, now a few problems from 1.4. Evaluate b squared minus 4ac when a equals 2, b equals negative 3, and c equals negative 1. So evaluate means just replace those variables with those values and come up with a numerical value for the expression. So try that, and then this ends up being another order of operations problem. So when we plug these values in, we end up getting negative 3 quantity squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 1. So we do the exponent, 9, and then we have to do all these multiplies before we subtract. So 4 times 2 is 8, then 8 times negative 1 is negative 8. So we end up subtracting negative 8 from 9, which means we're adding 8 to 9, and we get a result of 17. Our next problem is like number 2, the homework. Evaluate 4ab over 8 minus 2cd if a is negative 2, b is negative 1, c is negative 2, and d is 5. So plug in those values and see if you can get the correct amount or the correct value for this expression. Okay, so here that fraction bar, remember a fraction bar really means divide, and when you have a bunch of stuff, a bunch of operations, what's implied here is that you have parentheses over the entire numerator. That's how you interpret these fractions that have multiple terms like that. Put parentheses. And with that in mind, we would do the 4ab first. Multiplying 4 times negative 2 times negative 1. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8 times negative 1 is positive 8. So we get 8 over 8. Now our next operation would be multiply these numbers, the 2cd. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4, and then we still have to multiply by 5. So I've kind of shortened the process here of the operations, and you can do that once you get fairly good with these. Okay, so now we have a divide, we have a multiply and a subtract. Let's do these from left to right. 8 over 8 is 8 divided by 8 is 1. 4 times, or negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. So we end up with 1 plus 20, which is 21. And I'll put this up here so you can see it. Okay, next we're going to do some problems where we add like terms. Now I have 3 problems for you to try. Combine all the like terms and simplify these. Like terms have the same variables raised to the same powers. So try these 3, get answers, and come back. So in our first problem, x is the same as 1x. 1x minus 12x's makes a negative 11x. Our second problem, I'm changing it to 4.1x plus negative 5.9x. Might be easier to combine those decimals, and using that method of absolute values, they're different by 1.8, but it's a negative 1.8x. In the third problem, only the x squares are like terms. So we can combine the 1x squared and another 1x squared to make 2x squares. The other terms cannot be combined. Okay, our next 2 problems are where we use the distributive property to multiply out, and then after we multiply out each of these parts, we combine like terms. So starting out in this first one, we multiply negative 2 times x plus negative 2 times 2. And we multiply 3 times x plus 3 times 1. That's the distributive property that we covered in class. So we get negative 2x plus negative 4 plus 3x plus 3. And now we can combine like terms. Negative 2x's added to 3x makes 1x. Negative 4 added to 3 makes plus a negative 1. Or we can write this as just x minus 1. The second problem is a little trickier with the minus sign. And what I suggest is when you have a problem like this, where you're subtracting a multiplied quantity, because of the order of operation, we have to do all the multiplying first and then subtract. Well, that gets a little tricky to get those signs correct. So the way to avoid that is to rewrite, or at least rethink this as multiplying negative 4 times x minus 5, and then we're going to add those results. So I would suggest rewriting it like this: multiply out and then combine like terms. So give that a try and come back and check. Okay, applying the distributive property, 2 times 3x, 2 times a negative 1, minus 1 is the same as plus a negative 1. So I write plus 2 times negative 1. Negative 4 times x, negative 4 times a negative 5. That gives us 6x plus negative 2 plus negative 4x plus positive 20. Combining like terms, the x's, 6x minus 4x gives us 2x. Negative 2 plus 20 gives us 18. One last problem, similar to number 18 of the homework. Divide 1/3 by 6. And this problem confuses people. So they're not quite sure what to do if you're going to do this by hand. Well, even on a calculator, you're not quite sure what to do. So first of all, realize that we can write 6 as 6 over 1, a fraction. You can always write a whole number as a fraction by putting it over 1. So we have 1/3 divided by 6 over 1. So division by a fraction means invert and multiply by that fraction. So we change it to 1/3 times 1/6. Okay, so now multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators, 1/18. So that's how you handle whole numbers combined with fractions. Sometimes you have to turn the whole number into a fraction. Okay, that's it for now. We'll see you in class, and you can post any questions and discussions as well.